World War I. The First Total War was an era of profound destruction, but also a time of rapid technological evolution. From 1917 to the war's end, traditional combat met cutting-edge inventions that shaped the future of warfare. This is a story of how desperate innovation transformed the battlefield, answering critical questions about the effectiveness, weaknesses, and influence of these deadly technologies.
In the early years of the war, poison gas was a feared but unreliable weapon. Introduced by the Germans in 1915, gas attacks were as dangerous to the attackers as the defenders due to shifting winds. Chlorine, the first gas used, caused panic, but lacked lethality. By 1917, however, gas technology had evolved. The Germans introduced phosgene, a much more potent gas that, combined with improved delivery methods, increased effectiveness of chemical attacks. At Vimy Ridge in 1917, gas was unleashed with a devastating efficiency. One Allied soldier wrote, "We could see men stumbling and falling as the gas seeped into the trenches, the air thick with death." The weaknesses of gas attacks remain clear. Gas masks, developed quickly in response to the initial attacks, became standard issues, significantly reducing casualties. A sudden shift in the wind could still turn a gas attack into a disaster for the attackers. We all feared the gas. It could be our doom as easily as theirs, confessed a German officer. Despite these risks, poison gas was feared by all who faced it, leaving a lasting mark on the battles like Vimy Ridge and the Second Battle of Ypres.
The first half of the war was dominated by trench warfare, with both sides locked in bloody stalemates. Now, enter the tank, a new weapon designed to break the deadlock. The initial models, introduced in 1916, were slow, unreliable, and frequently broke down in the muck of no man's land. They were feared by few, and their limitations quickly became apparent. By 1917, however, tanks had evolved significantly. British engineers improved the design, reinforcing the armor and adding more reliable caterpillar tracks, making them more effective at crossing trenches and barbed wire. At the Battle of Cambrai in 1917, tanks demonstrated their potential. An observer described the scene as 400 tanks rolled forward. They were like giants, squashing wire and spraying death into the trenches. This is from the National Archives of 1917. The impact was immense as tanks crushed Germans' defenses and paved the way for the infantry. Yet, these machines had weaknesses. Early tanks were slow and not maneuverable, with a top speed of only 4 miles per hour. Mechanical failures were frequent, and German troops quickly learned to exploit these vulnerabilities. One soldier recalled, "The tank would sputter and stall, and the Germans would come out of their hiding spots, hunting the stranded crews like a game." From the British newspaper archive blog, posted in 2015. Despite this, tanks became symbols of power, feared by soldiers who witnessed their relentless advance. Their flaws did not diminish their impact in major battles like Cambrai, where they proved they could be the key to victory. Here's a quick question for you that we just recently answered. What was a major battle that the tanks dominated in? The answer is the Battle of Cambrai. With that out of the way, let's move on to the next killing machine.
Submarine warfare in the first years of World War I was largely experimental, with early U-boats struggling to find a decisive role. They were stealthy, but the torpedoes were unreliable and their periscopes offered only limited visibility. By 1917, however, U-boats had become a deadly force. The introduction of unrestricted submarine warfare saw German U-boats sink not just military vessels, but merchant ships and civilian liners. This decision brought the United States into the war after repeated losses, most famously the sinking of the RMS Lusitania. U-boats, feared by merchant and naval vessels alike, creating panic in the Atlantic. One survivor of a submarine attack described, "The water seemed to erupt as the ships vanished under the waves." Yet the power came with vulnerabilities. Early submarines were blind and slow underwater, making them easy targets if detected. Allied Q-ships, disguised armed vessels, exploited these weaknesses, luring U-boats into a trap. Despite these flaws, U-boats had a decisive influence on naval warfare. They played a crucial role in battles such as the 1917 Atlantic campaigns and unrestricted submarine warfare aimed at cutting off Allied supplies.
At the outbreak of World War I, machine guns were already recognized as powerful defensive weapons, but their effectiveness grew immensely throughout the war. In the early years, the heavy Maxim guns were cumbersome and required multiple soldiers to operate. However, by 1917, lighter and more efficient models were introduced, like the British Vickers and the German MG08-15. These upgrades allowed machine guns to be more mobile and flexible, capable of being mounted on vehicles and even aircraft. No weapon was more feared in trench warfare than a machine gun. As one soldier quotes, they fell like wheat before a scythe. We dare not to lift our heads above the trench." And this captured the terror it inspired. Machine guns were also especially devastating in battles like the Battle of Somme and Passchendaele, where they turned open fields into death traps for advancing troops. Their greatest strength, however, was also their greatest weakness. They had immense firepower in their defensive position, but they were also vulnerable if the enemy managed to close the distance. By 1917, synchronized machine guns mounted on aircraft revolutionized air combat. Dogfights became deadly dances in the sky. Synchronized machine guns used the ingenious Sinclair, also called an interrupter or a gun synchronizer. This device allowed single-engine aircraft to fire through the spinning propeller arc without shredding their own blades. Air superiority soon became a clear objective, further demonstrating the machine gun's lasting impact on modern warfare. Special question: what was the ironic part about their greatest strength? Immense firepower in a defensive position.
The next advancement in technology is aircraft and aviation. Initially, aircraft were fragile observation platforms, primarily used for scouting. The early biplanes were slow and lacked effective weaponry, posing little threat to ground forces. However, by 1917, aviation had transformed. Planes like the British Sopwith Camel and the German Fokker D-7 were equipped with synchronized machine guns. Synchronized machine guns became the terror of the skies. Pilots became warriors and legends, dominating major aerial battles above the Western Front. In battles such as the Third Battle of Ypres, aircraft scouted, strafed trenches, and bombed supply lines. "We climbed, spun, and fired, dancing with death in the clouds," wrote an Allied pilot. Bombing raids targeted not only military but civilian infrastructure, bringing a new dimension to warfare. Although early planes were fragile, with wooden frames that could easily splinter under fire, materials like lightweight duralium increased their durability and paved the way for peacetime aviation. By 1919, aviation's rapid development led to feats like Alcock's and Brown's transatlantic flight, showing the civilian potential of what had once been purely a war machine. Now time for the question of the skies. What were the two planes that reigned superiority over the skies in the late years of World War I? The answer is the British Sopwith Camel and the German Fokker D-7.
Medical advancements during World War I were born out of necessity. The horrific wounds inflicted by trench warfare and explosives led to innovations in plastic surgery and prosthetics. Early in the war, there were few effective methods to treat severe facial injuries. By 1917, however, surgeons like Harold Gillies were pioneering reconstructive techniques that changed the field. His work in developing the pedicule tube flap was groundbreaking, allowing for complex skin grafts. A soldier who benefited from these techniques said, "The work they did not only saved my face, but also my spirit." Prosthetics also improved as amputations became more common. Basic wooden limbs evolved into metal and plastic prosthetics, giving soldiers greater mobility. Hospitals dedicated to facial reconstruction and artificial limbs sprang up in Britain in 1920, paving the way for advancements in modern medicine. Special question: who was the surgeon that pioneered reconstructive techniques?
World War I was a crucible of technological innovation, where desperation drove rapid advancements. From the tanks that overcame trench warfare to the terror of poison gas and the birth of air combat, The second half of the war saw these innovations reach their peak effectiveness. These weapons, with their strengths and weaknesses, were feared by those who faced and dominated key battles that defined the conflict. The cost was immense, but the legacy of these advancements continued to shape the modern world. As one veteran observed, we fought in mud and blood, but out of the darkness came the light of progress. So to wrap up this video, what are the 6 categories of advancements made in the late years of World War I? The answer is poison gas, tanks, submarines or U-boats, machine guns, aircraft and aviation, and medical innovations. Alright, that's it for today. Thank you for listening. Farewell.